So something that's been doing the rounds on the internet recently when it comes to the Formula 1 fandom is the magic rear wing, or the passive DRS system on the McLaren Formula 1 car. Now, when I first heard about this, I thought, that doesn't sound too legitimate. And I mean that in the sense that, is this actually a passive DRS system? And if it is it legal? Well, I'm going to try and answer all these questions for you here, because it's something that, I'll be honest, a lot of people are calling for this to get banned, but should it get banned? Will it get banned? And what actually is it? Well, I'm going to answer all those questions for you here today, guys. So basically, DRS. Now, I've already done a video explaining what DRS is, how it works, but the long and short of it is, it's basically, you're meant to use DRS in a DRS zone when you're behind a car by less than 1 second at the detection point for the DRS. So that was the main straight in Baku, and also the second straight as well, where we had a DRS zone. It's meant to help overtaking. For the car that's trying to overtake, it basically means that some flaps open up in the rear wing, therefore the drag is reduced, hence the name, drag reduction system, and they get a speed boost effectively because they don't have the same amount of drag pulling the car back. It helps them overtake, but it's only meant to be used in those zones, whether it's qualifying, whether it's practice, whether it's the race, only use it in those zones. The rest of the time, the rear wing is closed, and that also helps downforce as well through corners. But somebody's noticed something on the camera that is facing rearwards on the McLaren. When the car gets above a certain speed, the rear wing seems to open up a little bit. And at first, again, when I was seeing this, I'm like, is that just my eyes? Am I seeing something that I'm expecting to see? Is it actually there? But it is actually there. Now, if you have a look at some of the onboards from, I believe this is from Oscar Piastri, but I can't tell from the angle we're looking at here, whichever McLaren it is. But basically, when the car is at low speed, the rear wing looks like it always looks like. It just looks like a rear wing. There's no problems there. But when the car gets above a certain speed, I would say about 130, 140 miles an hour or so, with the rear wing, there's two sections to it on the, as it were, the X-plane, if it was. I mean, there are the supports that are going up the Y-axis effectively, but on the plane, the bit that goes across, it's mainly two elements. And those elements, the top one, basically, it does open up a little bit, and that creates a little gap between the top element and the bottom element on the rear wing. That allows some airflow to go through, and it basically, without reducing downforce too much, I mean, he's still able to go flat out through the high-speed chicane at Baku, which is no mean feat for these cars, because of the speeds they do. He's still able to do that, so he's clearly getting enough downforce there, and the wing basically gives him less drag by a tiny margin. It's not the same effect as what DRS is, but it will help the car. It will help reduce drag when it does this, and clearly it's not impacting downforce, because you only need downforce through the slow speed corners. I don't know if they'd run this around a track with a lot of high speed corners, because I think that would actually hurt them in terms of the downforce that you'd be losing, but we'll see what happens. Singapore is not one of those, so I would expect this still to be on the car in Singapore, probably. But should it be banned? Should this be banned? Is this an illegal move by McLaren to do this? Well, to figure that out, instead of looking at people online and what they're saying, I have instead gone to the FIA's Formula 1 regulations for 2024, the up-to-date regulations as of, I think the last change was somewhere around before the Miami Grand Prix. I think that's the last time they changed, last time they amended it. Now, I've had a look at the regulations with respect to the rear wings here. And by the way, guys, I'm just going to caveat anything I say by saying if I've missed anything here, I apologise, but the Formula 1 regulations are 178 pages long. So they are a lot, there's a lot of stuff in there. There is a lot of stuff in there. But when it comes to the rear wing, this is basically down to flexibility. And it's something we've talked about with the front wings as well. McLaren and Mercedes producing front wings that Red Bull were thinking about protesting, but they didn't end up protesting because the FIA say they are legal. This is down to flexibility, and it's a similar story with what it was with the front wing, with the rear wing, in my opinion. There are tests on here, like I'll just read this out. This is 3.15.9 rear wing main plane flexibility. It says bodywork may not deflect more than 6 millimeters along the loading axis and 1 degree in a Y plane when two loads of 0, 0, minus 1000 newtons, basically a 1,000 Newton force each are applied simultaneously to the rear wing profiles. The loads will be applied at, and it gives the coordinates there. So, and there's a few things on here as well when it comes to that, just similar tests. Basically, the rear wing, when these tests are being applied, it does not deflect. Clearly, a greater force is being applied when the car is going at that speed in order to change the shape of the rear wing just by a little bit. And this again feeds into some of the arguments that the likes of Red Bull and Ferrari have, that these tests are not sufficient, that they have to apply different loads to better simulate the car at high speed. And again, I am not an expert in that, but just going off of what I'm seeing here and what I'm seeing in the regulations as well, perhaps that is a true point. But for the moment, according to the regulations, it's legal. I can't find anything in here that says that you can't do this, that this is illegal, you can't have this, because the tests that they have, clearly McLaren must have passed them, otherwise they would have been disqualified from Baku because the car would have been illegal. So what that basically means, that even if, and going off of what they're saying about the front wings, even if they deem that the front wings are not quite in the spirit of the sport, they're not going to change the regulations until next year at the earliest. This is not going to affect the 2024 championship, and I think it's going to be a similar story with the rear wing. So what's going to happen is that the likes of Red Bull and Ferrari and Mercedes are probably going to try and copy this, because for me, it's absolutely ingenious of McLaren. They are absolutely on it like a car bonnet right now when it comes to upgrades. They have produced the best car on the grid, and they're doing some things that are incredibly innovative. Some people might say that this is cheating, it's not in the spirit of the sport, and I just say absolute rubbish to that, because at the end of the day, every team is trying to outcompete each other. Every team is trying to bend the rules as much as they can. This is Formula One. They take this rule book that I've got here on my second screen, and they go through it, and they see what they can get away with the regulations. They try and loopholes, they try and bend things as much as they can, and they always argue things in their favour. That is sport, that is competition, that is Formula One. It always has been that way, and it always will be that way. It doesn't matter whether it's McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, doesn't matter. It's always going to be the same. So even if they do deem that the regulations need to change, the test needs to be updated, unless there's a genuine safety concern, the FIA is not going to change the regulations to reflect this until next year at the earliest. So there we go, guys. Those are my thoughts on it. It's ingenious, it's clever, it's bending the rules, but clearly it's legal, and I think it's going to stay legal as well. But that's my opinion. I want to hear yours in the comments below, as always, guys, on this subject. And of course, yeah, subscribe to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more Formula One news, opinions, and analysis just like this.